For the first time ever, UFD Tech is now going to be filming with a cinema camera. We got a whole bunch of stuff to change up the production here at UFD Tech because I've been itching to get back to a lot of the type of content that we used to make in South Africa. And we've also been expanding our portfolio as a media company. So this thing is going to allow us to hopefully do that. This is the DJI Ronin 4D. This is a 4-axis stabilized cinema camera that allows us to get quality that we haven't been able to do before. Because one of the things we've been doing with how we shoot videos is going handheld, especially for product unboxings and a bunch of other stuff. So right now, Kyler is filming this video, but that leads to a lot of weird things like handshake and just unstable video, which people don't like. We've gotten a lot of comments about how people don't enjoy that, but we also have some other production challenges that we have to overcome, like the fact that we need to wirelessly transmit the video so that I can view it on a monitor as well as we can output it to our live streams. But one of the things you'll notice is that wireless transmitter on top of the camera actually is big and it's bulky, which makes it very difficult for balancing on a gimbal. We actually aren't able to have, it's too top heavy. It ends up tilting or the motors struggle. It really becomes a problem. Additionally, some of you might remember last year we did a couple of car reviews, and that's some content that we want to branch on into here at UFD Tech. And we also at one point last year shot a TV show pilot with all of our equipment, and we realized some of the limitations that we have with the cameras that we're using, because we do have things like the Sony a7S III. This current video is being filmed on the Sony a7 IV. We do film on full frame mirrorless cameras, but nothing that's cinema quality. We don't film in ProRes, we don't film in RAW, and that gives us less expandability in certain areas that the Ronin 4D is going to help us to overcome. Now, I haven't seen a whole lot of YouTubers actually use this thing. It seems like it's marketed towards professionals, and part of that is the cost. It's a very expensive kit to get into, but it solves some problems that we actually have on our production regularly with how we want to do videos that I think the average YouTuber that's sitting in their house probably won't encounter these production challenges that we've run into. It's got a flight case. Oh, it's even got like TSA lock dials. You see that? That's gonna be good for traveling if we ever go back to South Africa. Open it up, and there we have the new camera setup. Now, DJI has come out with a solution that not only has a 3-axis gimbal, but it actually has the 4th axis. So it actually can stabilize the vertical bob that you sometimes get when you're walking or moving, or you mount this thing to a car and it's bouncing on the road. But it also has some other features that we can utilize, like the fact that it has a wireless video transmitter that we can actually put onto the camera itself. And then we can have a remote monitor that can either control the gimbal or be hooked up to where we need to be doing the live streams and having this put out the data to a computer that we're trying to live stream for. So this should allow us to get smoother footage in a way that is actually better for you, the viewer, in a much more simplified package. And one of the biggest nuisances that comes with gimbals, when you zoom in, you can either lose focus on what you're looking at, which this has good autofocus, so that's not necessarily happening, but then you change the balance of the actual gimbal to where it's now more front heavy. Zoom in. It changes, yes, that's exactly what happens every time we put it on a gimbal. And one of the things that DJI just released was their 17-28 T3 cinema lens that will allow you to actually zoom in without changing the balance on the gimbal itself. Additionally, they also launched the Ronin 4D Flex, which allows us to put the gimbal and the lens on this bad boy, and once it comes out, put the actual brains of the camera in a backpack, so that way we can just utilize the main portion of the gimbal in smaller confined spaces and not have to hold what I believe is supposed to be 11 pounds right in front of us all the time. It can be on our backs. But DJI like released that backpack to like a whole bunch of YouTubers, but it hasn't been for sale. I've pre-ordered it, but it's not here yet. But I'm gonna get this thing built out and we can see how it compares to this. I need the battery, which thankfully is the same battery that comes for the drones. So the ecosystem's already there for a lot of the accessories. A little bit, that actually was red in a lot of ways, where there was proprietary nonsense all over the place. DJI still kind of has that. Like, in order for us to shoot to an SSD, it has to be their proprietary SSD. And if you want to shoot in ProRes RAW, you have to buy that $800 1 terabyte SSD, which is absolutely ridiculous. But that's unfortunately not unprecedented in the camera industry. But we're not going to be shooting to SSD. We're going to shoot to CF Express. Additionally, like, DJI's made promises of releasing an 8K version of this. This is only the 6K version, but this camera got announced and released like over a year ago, and they still haven't come out with the 8K version. But the real benefit of all of this is that, like, DJI just released an all-in-one package, as opposed to us like hacksawing a bunch of different pieces together with the wireless transmitter, trying to use an additional gimbal. One of the things that I miss from the content that we used to do in South Africa, that it was just more run and gun style. Reece used to hold the camera a lot, but we encountered a lot of similar challenges as we do right now, where it's just things are shaky no matter how much IBIS you have on your actual main camera. Oh, that's neat. So the like heatsink grills on this match up with the heatsink grills right here, and then it also has all of the same connectors that allow you to just pop it in and then screw it down. And now we have wireless transmission. Can you believe it's that easy? Like, it's all there, and it doesn't affect the gimbal balance whatsoever, unlike the freaking way we have it set up right now. We've tried so many different solutions of putting a transmitter on different portions of the gimbal, trying to hot shoe it over here, and usually what we end up with is that the HDMI cable starts tugging on the camera and ruining our shot. Now we don't have that problem. Battery should just... Whoa! Oh, I have to screw that. So I screwed the battery plate to this, but I didn't screw this into the camera body. Unfortunately, this doesn't solve the weight component until we get the backpack. But one of the things I saw when I was looking at reviews for this system is that you could actually buy multiple versions of these, because this is a 2-meter long cable. So you get about 6 feet of slack where you can go, like, you could leave the backpack on the floor even. You wouldn't have to necessarily hold on to it. But I could buy another one of these and connect it. Like, you can get up to, I think it's 6 meters before signal loss, even at 8K. So we could do it, like, we could have the camera on another side of the room and still be able to do everything. All right, now this should be secure. Integrated top handle, which is nice. You can just pick it up, do everything that way. And because DJI thought ahead and was like, hey, everybody's on their own camera system already, they sell mounts for all of the current lenses that we have in the Sony lineup. So we have an E-mount lens in case we want to use any of the lenses that we have, as opposed to the cinema zoom lens that they sell themselves. I've never had a T lens before. So this is also one of the cool things that DJI has with their setup is Lidar Autofocus, so that you can even use old school cinema lenses that don't have autofocus baked in, and it can still use this to get autofocus on the lens itself. There's the full frame sensor. DJI's brand new DL mount is what we're using here. And then it's just a matter of balancing it once and never again. Kyler's excited about that. That was the worst part when we filmed that TV show, was having to balance everything all of the time. Or you take the camera off of the gimbal and you have to put the gimbal away to travel to the next site. And then having to take it out and do all of that again was always a nightmare. It's got a lens on and everything. Let's go ahead and boot it up. Also, it has an integrated monitor so that whoever's operating the camera can actually view what's going on and doesn't have to rely on a tiny little viewfinder. It's flashing, so I'm gonna guess that means that the battery's dead. Let's cut for right now. So while we waited for the battery to charge, I got the rest of it put together. We put the CF Express card right down here in that little slot. Very simple. Additionally, I got the handles all connected, which allow us to actually have a grip. But we also have the remote monitor, which if we wanted to, we could insert these handles and then actually control the gimbal from a distance, depending on how we wanted to do the operation, which this will come in handy if, again, we get to doing car videos at any point in the future, especially if we wanted to have the gimbal set up on a follow car. It's actually really quick and easy to get those handles set on. And one of the things I want to praise DJI for is the fact that they actually include a separate type of battery mount so that you can actually use Sony NPF batteries, which is the ecosystem that we invested in, and you don't have to use their proprietary whatever lithium ion DJI batteries are that they include with the remote monitor. So now let's go ahead and turn this on for the very first time. That light's flashing. I don't know what that means. Do I have to unlock everything first? When I press the power button, the battery starts flashing. So there is power. To the manual! The Ronin 4D needs to be activated through DJI Assistant 2 before using for the first time. Follow the steps to activate the Ronin 4D. Make sure gimbal mode is toggled to follow or lock, which it was. The lock switch is in the unlocked position. Okay. Otherwise, the 4D cannot work properly. That's good to know. Press and hold the power button for 1 second. That was it. It was the lock button. Use the provided USB-A to USB-C cable to connect to the main body with a computer. We have to hook this up to a computer. Cameras just don't work these days anymore. Oh, but it actually is kind of already working, so you can see it right there. Didn't flip it over, but
I want to flip over.
I'm sure we could adjust that at some point, but it does work. The gimbal working? Oh, look at that.
Chicken neck.
I don't think the chicken neck is working yet. Okay, the chicken neck can work. It's just not actually. Oh, so this is the focus right now. If you look right here, that scroll wheel is changing where the focus is, but we can program it to actually work as the zoom.
That looks freaking beautiful.
This is a real proper camera, my guy. we've been filming on like budget YouTuber stuff, which is still very expensive, but this like actually kicks it up to the next level. Oh, I forgot to bring this up to you. It has a built-in ND filter.
Are you serious? Oh, whoa.
Did you see that? It just darkened the image, so that way we can take this out and we don't have to.
Is it like physical? I hear mechanical.
Yeah, it's a physical built-in ND filter. So that way we can keep everything at the shutter speed that we need to. We don't have to put any adapters on the lenses or anything like that.
Oh, this is ridiculous.
It does record scratch audio, thankfully, which some cinema cameras actually don't do that. So that way we can sync it up with the lav mic that we're using right now. But yeah, just even without the chicken neck, which I need to figure out how to turn that on. Z-axis. It's really yelling at me to activate this thing, especially because it has dual native ISOs where the best image you're going to get is at 800 ISO or 5000. Having that built-in ND filter will make sure that we can actually run it at the native ISOs. Oh my goodness. Oh, this is going to take forever for us to learn how to use properly. This is a brand new scenario for us. Yeah, so we can either shoot in 17:9 or 2.39:1, which is a widescreen aspect ratio. So the B-roll can actually be properly, you know, when you have the horizontal bars, typically YouTubers just add those in post unless you're using a proper setup which can record it natively. Oh, this is a button and a rotary dial. Oh, there's like an internal button right here that switches it to, it's in sport mode right now. Or you can choose it to medium mode, and you hold it and it'll change how the gimbal actually, so that's sport mode where it's actually following, and then you just hold that button and it changes how the gimbal behaves. And then this locks it, right? So it's not following. That's again, another button. I don't know if that does anything. And then, oh, chicken neck, we did it. I figured out, I don't know how I figured it out, but we did. Oh my gosh, look at that. That's, oh man, this is stabilized as heck. Okay, if I hit record, what's gonna happen? I can't hit record until we activate it on the, but you can pull focus with this dial right here. So this is one of the cool things. The reason why DJI has the 4th axis is because if you look on the underside, it actually has sensors right here that do depth sensing to the ground, which they use on their drones for actually making sure that those hover properly. So they have the Z-axis data to actually make sure that it's staying stabilized as you do everything. This looks like a drone indoors. Okay, I need to activate it so I can show everybody. Yeah, let's cut. So I got everything activated and figured out, and now I know how to use this thing. But we did run into what appears to be a very common issue on these Ronin 4D situations, which is that they'll back focus when you're supposed to be using the Lidar Autofocus. This is a very common issue that I saw across DJI's forums. They haven't updated the firmware on this camera since April, even though it's been a known issue since the firmware that came out in March. So you can see here, when this lens is set to 17 millimeters, I'm in focus, no problem. As soon as I switch it to 28 millimeters, it focuses about 2 feet behind me, unless I put my fingers in front of my face, and then it can actually focus on my face at that point. It's a weird alleged firmware issue that DJI actually needs to sort out right now. But if we keep it in 17mm mode, then the focus actually isn't a problem. But I'm not getting the full functionality of my lens in order to have that. And then on top of that, to roll back to a firmware where you don't have the back focusing issue, this specific lens isn't supported anymore, and neither is the 40 Flex unit. Those got supported in the March update. So if I want to have this camera set up on the brand new situation that DJI is heavily promoting, I can't do that with any of the firmware that actually supports not having back focus, which is a major problem. So I have one thing to say to DJI, and I have one thing to say to camera YouTubers. DJI, update your software better. It's been 6 months since this has become a problem and you've done nothing about it. Additionally, the backpack that you talked about releasing for this Flex system you announced at the same time still isn't out yet. Better timelines for releasing products. Additionally, this is the 6K version. They announced the Ronin 4D well over a year ago in both 6K and 8K flavors. There's no 8K version of this out on the market just yet. Only YouTubers have gotten to touch it, which brings me to my second point. Why did I have to discover this back focus issue on my first day with the product and not a single YouTuber brought this up in any capacity? It is a severe issue that is known across DJI's forums. I'm in a public Facebook group that I joined yesterday as soon as I found out this was an issue, with many people saying, yeah, buddy, join the club. DJI has not updated it yet, nor have they given us any communication on what's happening. Why, if I could find out that this is a major flaw in the first day, did not a single YouTuber bring this up? I watched dozens of videos on the Ronin 4D. I watched dozens of videos on the new DL 17 to 28mm lens, the Flex system. I made sure that I was getting into a purchase that I knew would be good for our production and everything that we're trying to do. And day one, I discovered an issue, but I couldn't find it in any other media where people brought it up. But in the user forums, this is a very well documented problem that DJI still hasn't fixed. I think it's kind of inexcusable that this wasn't addressed in a single video that I watched. Unless DJI is giving YouTubers special firmware, which is possible. So let's bring it up to what we actually can do with this system. We just have to keep it in 17mm mode in order to film, to keep autofocus. If we go into 28, we're gonna have that back focus where it's not gonna actually have any sort of correspondence with me. But we do have a robust setup outside of that. Kyle, you wanna come around and show people the menu? So even in this high bright monitor that comes included with the Ronin 4D, you have quick access to basically every little thing that you wanna tweak. You have ISO, you have aperture, shutter speed, FPS, the built-in ND filter that you can change at a moment's notice, changing the white balance, changing the time code, seeing record stuff, as well as the resolution 2K, 4K, and 6K. Or if you want more granularity, you can go into the home menu and detail all of the things, like if you want to shoot in full frame or Super 35, resolution, what LUT you want to record in, D-Log, HLG, Rec 709, as well as a whole bunch of other things to control when it comes to audio, zebra stripes. We're not a camera channel, so I'm not going to go into full detail on all of this, but suffice it to say that the software is pretty dang good. I just wish the full support for firmware was here. But let me bring up another thing that I discovered yesterday, which is an overlook on my part. I can't really blame anybody else for this, but I presumed that on this remote monitor right here, this HDMI was going to be HDMI out because you get your signal wirelessly. Turns out that's an HDMI in, and so we actually can't use it as is for our live streams to have an HDMI out. Instead, I had to buy a $500 accessory that goes on the back right here and installs, and you get SDI out as well as HDMI out and DC power for the monitor, which is all fine and good. Getting cinema grade stuff is always going to be very expensive, but there's yet another firmware problem that I discovered when reading through the forums. The HDMI and SDI out that comes for this $1,600 monitor, on top of the accessory that you need to buy for transmitter, on top of the $500 backplate you need to buy, doesn't support audio out over HDMI and SDI. This is a known issue by DJI, and they have not fixed it in years. This is honestly inexcusable for the amount of money that somebody is spending on a cinema grade setup like this, not having either communication of when you're gonna fix these issues or having fixed these issues in a reasonable time frame is just frankly ridiculous. Now, this is not enough for us to not consider to continue to use this. We can get around the issues that it has in order to benefit from all of the good features that it does have on top of our current setup, but this needs to be better. DJI, you need to be better at communication, you need to be better at firmware updates, and when there are known broken bugs, you need to actually tell your customers what is going on and when you're going to fix it. I'm already in direct contact with DJI support, and the first thing they did was when I sent them a link to the forum post saying I'm having this issue, they responded, "Are you sure you're having that issue and it's not another one?" It's inexcusable. But there's a lot of cool features that you do get, like you have gyroscope control on this remote monitor. So I can turn it on and then look at that gimbal going crazy, doing everything and following where I'm at. You can also take the handles off of this flex system and put them on to the side so that you get all of the control that you would right here remotely. And honestly, it feels like there is next to no latency on this. Do you want to give it a try, Kyler? So you can just see in real time how it responds?
It's kind of wild.
So this is great for things like car videos, which we have done some of them and been able to remotely monitor our cameras from inside the vehicle. This is going to take it to the next level once we finally get more into that sector here on the channel. If we continue in different media opportunities, we will have somebody who can wirelessly pull focus, make sure that everything's going smoothly with the production and not necessarily being the person who's operating the camera, which is fantastic. And that brings me to this next little piece that they, again, updated in March, but still doesn't have all the full firmware support that we need in order to get the back focus taken off of the lens. I'm still salty about that. Excuse me, I spent a lot of money on this setup and it doesn't work the way that it's supposed to. But this gives us a 2-meter cable so that when the backpack that does finally come out for it, which they announced in conjunction with this, right? Once that finally does come out, we can put it in a backpack right here, and then we have a much lighter setup with the brains of the camera being behind us, and then this weight is a lot easier to manage as opposed to this big behemoth of a camera. Now, you do lose the Z-axis stabilization. This is only 3 axis. On the pan, tilt, and roll, you lose that little chicken head situation, but you can kind of get around that by just moving a little bit smoother. It's like a normal gimbal at that point, but you have the brains of a cinema camera directly attached, which this is comparable to something Sony came out with their lens setup, except for just to get this situation, this is less than $1,000 to get this detachment setup. For the Sony setup, it was like $11,000 for the Sony Venice, I think it's called. We're not in the realm of being able to even consider something like that. So this makes it a lot easier to film, makes it a lot easier for the camera operator like Kyler to be able to do everything. You control everything directly from here. I just started recording and now we can get footage done really well. Kyler, you want to give this a spin? You want to record on this?
Gimme.
Transition.
Gimme.
I'll take that. Yeah, it's gonna take a little bit of figuring out. Oh yeah, if you, we didn't even talk about like the tracking feature. So if you turn on track and you draw a border around my face, it will just automatically follow me. So I could have it set up on a gimbal and do this without you here. And then wherever I am in the frame when you initially draw me is where it's gonna keep me in the frame. I'm walking, look at me go, it's following me. Are you sure it's not gonna fall off the table there?
Yeah.
Okay. Or then, guess what? If I jump, oh, follows me up and down too. Keeps me in frame. There's a little, like, if I do really quick movements, it struggles to compensate, but it's not doing too bad. And then I can monitor the shot to make sure that everything's good from here. We've got a lot of videos planned where we can actually make a pretty decent use of this as opposed to our current very compiled together setup, like just being able to bring something to the table. And then Kyler, once we have something here where I'm no longer the main focus of the video, you can then just switch with the joystick controls to focusing on something like the interior of this instead of me.
Don't know how to do that.
You have to turn the track off. So once you turn the track off, then you go in,
There we go.
and then now you have the option to just focus on whatever it is that we're talking about as opposed to me. And then you can just recenter it up. So I'm excited for this. There are some severe oversights that I am not happy with, as I've expressed, but hopefully this helps to up our production quality as well as give us more flexibility in different things that we want to do moving forward. Kyler, you got any comments?
Bazinga.